guys, welcome back to the workshop. Now I have some more electrical related content for you. It's going to ties the woodworking and the electrical stuff together. Now a lot of you guys have been asking me lately to come up with a system similar to what the Festool tools use. In other words, you have a quick power couple for your tools along with the dust extraction, so you can plug in your dust extraction, plug in your tool, work away, put away this tool and come over and just take that same system, dust extraction and power, and plug it into the next tool. So you don't need separate leads, separate plugs and stuff for different tools. You can just have one hose and one plug, quick couple on the end of it that you can plug into all your tools. And like I said, a number of you guys have now emailed me and messaged me on Instagram and places like that about can this be done. So I'm going to do it in this video. I'm going to give you guys a couple of options. I'm going to give you some suggestions of what to do and what absolutely not to do. We'll look at the pros and cons in doing this, and I'll give you some electrical advice, and like I say, we'll do this. So we're going to put some braided sleeve on our hose. We're going to insert a power cable into that. We're going to have two quick couples either end that we can quick couple the hose onto and quick couple onto our tool. So without further ado, let's get into this. Okay, so just like the start of all my electrical related content, I want to put a few caveats out there first before we get into this. Now, do not attempt to do any electrical work unless you are competent to do so. I'm a qualified electrician. That's what I do for my living. I'm okay to do this. I will show you guys how to do this and we'll go through the pros and cons of it. But like I say, if you are not competent to do electrical work, do not attempt to do it. Get a qualified electrician to do this work for you. Now the second thing I want to say is I'm going to be cutting the power cord on my Bosch track saw and fitting it with a kind of quick couple socket. Now this could potentially void the warranty of this tool. This is my track saw, it's my choice to do it. I'm doing it in order to instruct you guys on what's possible. Know that before you go into attempt any of this work, you may void the warranties on your tool. So if your tools are still under warranty, you may not want to do this. We're going to create a system similar to what Festool have. Festool do sell leads, I'll get into that in a minute, that you can put onto your non-Festool tools in order to do this as well. So without further ado, now let's take a look at the materials that we want to use for this video. And just remember those two caveats and everybody should be fine. Okay, so let's get started. Now, like I said, what are we trying to achieve here? We want to get something like the Festool system. So we're going to have a hose with a power lead incorporated into it and have a quick couple attachment on the end of it so we can just plug into every single one of our tools. So any tool we want, we'll have our hose and power in place on our table. Just a case of pick up our tool and we have air, or we have dust extraction and we have power there ready to go. Now, like I said already, Festool do sell the cord and the quick connect option to retrofit your existing tools. You probably will void the warranty if you open up your tool and retrofit it with the Festool cord. And the Festool cord, I think, is about 20 to 25 euros, something like £20 sterling for each of your tools. Plus then you'll have to buy the Festool lead and all that equipment. And it's quite expensive, Festool equipment. This is a couple of euros to do this. So if you're in around 20 euros, you'll fit out all your tools. So that's what we're going to look at. So what we have is some 40mm braided sleeve. Now braided sleeve we use the whole time in the electrical industry. We use this to as cable tidy. We run a lot of cables into it. You can pull it nice and tight and it cinches down. I'll give you a close up of all this when we're using it. So anywhere a machine, you might have a machine with a bunch of cables and you have a moving part, we use this braided cable, this braided sleeve. It's readily available. I will leave links in the description to everything I'm going to use in this video. I have some Knightsbridge is the name of the company, make this plug and socket. This is what I'm going to go for and I'll explain why in a minute. We're also going to take a look at the IEC type plugs. This is the question that most of you guys have asked me about, and that is, you might know them commonly as kettle leads or kettle plugs. They're mostly used in IT equipment. They're a nice tidy little plug and socket, but I don't recommend them for this application, and we'll explain all that now shortly. So let's get in and get a close-up of all this stuff and I'll tell you the pros and cons of it. Okay, so let's have a look at two plug and socket options. Now, like I said, this is the one that most of you guys have asked me about. So in all the emails, you guys say a kettle lead. Can I put a kettle lead type plug on my power tools. Now, I don't like using these for that application. They're fine for IT equipment or any stationary indoor equipment. These things aren't actually bad. These ones are actually 16 amp ones. Most of them are 10 amp. I would not attempt to use the 10 amp ones because some of your tools will run close to 10 amps, and you always want to oversize your socket and your plug so that it can take the load. Now, these are pretty good connections, but like I said, they're for stationary applications. On a power lead, you're going to get a lot of movement, and when you get a lot of movement, you get wiggle, and you can see these plugs and sockets will wiggle. They will eventually come loose, especially if you're doing a lot of work, a lot of up and down with your track saw and stuff, and this can come loose. And the biggest problem with that is you're disconnecting on load. You never ever want to plug a tool out while it's switched on. Always switch the tool off before you plug it out. If you have ever plugged anything out on load, you will know that it will arc. Plugs and sockets are not designed to disconnect load. They're just designed to decouple from the power system. The switch on the tool is designed to disconnect the load. Now, if we get arcing in here, we can get carbon build-up. And if we get carbon build-up, we get a build-up resistance. And we can basically just turn this into a melting block, fuse the plug together. So this is why I don't recommend the IEC type plugs, guys. So that's the first thing. We're not going to look at this anymore. There is a locking version of this available, but I couldn't get it in anything bigger than a 10 amp version. There is one specific company that make a locking version of this, which may have been a good option, but like I said, they don't make them any bigger than 10 amps. Now, the other reason I don't like this is it is not IP rated. So if you're doing outdoor work, water ingress and soil and dust ingress can happen to these. They're not IP rated. They're for indoor use only. So that kind of rules them out for you guys working out on site or working outdoors. And the other big factor, like I said already, is they don't lock. So they're not going to be ideal for this application. So this is what I've found. This is what I've come up with. So this is, like I said, from the company Knightsbridge. This is a 16 amp IP68 plug and socket, and it's nice and compact in size. So it has a twist lock mechanism. So you unscrew this part here and your switch and your socket will come apart just like that. Now, it's not obviously as quick as the Festool system. That's like a quarter turn and it pops apart, but it has a little locator pin on the earth plug, which is nice, so you can't confuse them. So you just line that up, pop them back together, and then you have to twist this all the way home to make that connection. You can't just push them together. It has to be twisted home. That pulls the plug and socket together, and now you have a complete IP rated connection, which is solidly joint, which is what we need. So the disadvantage of this is we have to spend about 10 seconds just twisting this couple off, as opposed to the Festool system just to get these apart. And there we have our plug and socket. So that's what we're going to be using. Again, these will be linked in the description below. Okay, so the next item we're going to be using is some of this braided sleeve. Now, this is 40mm braided sleeve, which was more than enough to go over our hose. And this stuff expands out, so you can widen it out by pushing it together. When you pull it apart, it cinches down and tightens down. Works like a Chinese finger trap if you've ever seen them. If you get this stuff small enough, you put one finger on this end and one finger on the other end, try and pull them apart, it'll clamp down on both fingers. So you got to push them together in order to get back out. So same thing. So this is what we're going to be using. Like I say, we use this in the electrical industry all the time for cable tidying and cable management. And I got all this stuff from RS Components, so Radionics is where all this stuff comes from. I'll link it all in the description below, like I said. So it's nice, simple braided sleeve. We're going to make a nice braided hose, and this will help with the hose stop snagging on things, and it'll also carry our power cable in it as well. So let's look at the flex we're going to be using, or the cord. Okay, so next up we're going to talk about the power cable, the cord or the flex, whatever you want to describe it as. And this is not going to be long enough to do or what we need, and we're going to be cutting it about here anyway and putting our quick couple on. So we're going to have to get a piece of cord. Now, you always want to get cord that is the same size as the diameter of the cores that are in the power tool you're using, or bigger. I recommend you go bigger in size. The majority of power tools, it will be written right on the cable what they are, and I believe this is 2 by 1 square. So this is a 2 core, so there's only a live and neutral in this. Same with the Triton router, the same with most modern tools. They will not be grounded, they will not carry an earth because they are deemed to be fully insulated. In other words, any of the live conductors cannot come in contact with any of the conductible parts, and most of all the handles and everything are plastic, so they are deemed to be fully insulated, therefore not requiring an earth. However, that is not true of all tools. So you want to use a 3-core flex. That's what we're going to be using. For any tools that may require an earth, you are covered. Some of your tools don't, some of your tools may. So what we're going to splice in now with our dust extraction hose is a 3-core flex. And I have a piece of old 110 extension cord, and this is 2.5 millimeters in diameter. Like I say, this is a 1 square, so this is essentially doubling the diameter of this, and this is toughened flex. So any of you guys in the UK and Ireland, you will know exactly what these are, especially if you work out on site. All tools on site has to operate at 110, and these 110 cords are everywhere, and if they get damaged, you can no longer use them on site because they won't pass the tests, and everything has to be pat tested on site now. So I have a couple of these from my time as being an electrician. The cord itself is actually perfect. There's no damage, no cracks and no splits anywhere, and it's tough and flex. You have to use tough and flex for your power tools, guys. Domestic flex or cord will not do. It has to be the toughened type. So make it 3-core, make it bigger than what comes on the tool, and make sure it is tough and flex, whatever color you decide to use. If you're out on site, get the yellow stuff. If you have an old power lead, a 110 power lead, you guys who are working out on site and want to do this mod, then this is the color to go for. Otherwise you can use blue or you can use the black, but make sure it is toughened and that it's 3 cores and it's larger in diameter than the power tools cord, and we should be good. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so let's get on then and make what we're going to make. Some of you guys are probably looking on now saying, what the hell is he talking about? Well, don't worry, it's all going to become very clear very shortly. This is just nice, quick and simple. So first thing we want to do is get the attachments off our hose, and these are usually reverse thread. So just twist them in a clockwise direction in order to get them off, and they twist straight off. So we have both of those off. Now, we want to get our flex or our cord. It's roughly the same length to this. Actually, we're going to leave it a little bit longer. So let's grab one end of this. We can measure it off. So I'm going to leave it just be a little bit longer than our actual hose. And we just run our hands with the two of them together, just like that. Now we're measured roughly the same length again. Want a little bit of an overhang on this end as well. Now we're going to snip that guy off. So just like that. So that is our cord now measured out to our hose. So let me get you in for a slightly closer look at what we're going to do next. Okay, so the next step then is just to get the cord and the hose together. Now I'm going to keep the two of these inside in the braid for the simple reason I hate these bloody things snagging on everything, and if I add the cable to the outside, then that's just going to add to the snagging. Now, if you do have an overhead system and you have a nice short cord and you can coil it up, actually Carol over at Straw Bite Workshop, he makes some really nice little 3D printed parts that you can clip onto your hose, and it's a nice, really nice cable management system. He's also made some pretty cool stuff for the track and the track saw for offsetting the curve of the blade, so definitely check Carol out over there. I'll link to him below as well if you want to check those things out. However, for my installation, it's just going to be a case of insulating tape down the side of this. Inside in the braid is where I want it, so that's what it's going to be. Now, make sure if you're doing it like this that you keep the flex on one side of the hose the whole way. You don't want it coiling around the hose, and tape it at regular intervals so that it's easy to coil this thing up at the end of the day. And when we want to take this or disconnect it and put it away when we're not using it, we can do so, and it's not going to cause us any problems. So I'll get on and tape this up, and when I have that done, we'll jump back in. Okay guys, so there is our hose and our cord all taped up the whole way down. Again, kept on one side the whole way down. There's no bulges. Everything is kept nice and tight. It's the same length the whole way. So when we go to coil this thing up, it's not going to cause us any problem. We won't have lumps of cord bulging out the side. And the braided sleeve will help keep all this together anyway. So there we go. It's all the way down alongside of that. So now let's get the braided sleeve on this. I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so let's get our braided sleeve on this. Now you can see I've left some of the flex overhanging. I'll show you the reason for that in a minute. And we've also stopped taping it about 6 to 8 inches back from the end. So there's a reason for that now too. Now, shoving flexible cable down anything that's flexible is an absolute nightmare. Believe me, I'm a long-suffering electrician, so we don't want to do that. So let's catch this guy, shove him back down the hose just like so. Fold it nice and flat against it, and we just put a small little bit of insulating tape here because this piece will be coming back off again. So there we go. Now that will go down this braided sleeve far easier than trying to get that wobbly flex down it. So now this braided sleeve, like I told you, expands once you push from behind. If you pull it, it gets tight, and this is going to be a nightmare. So we want to expand the end of it first and slip it on. A little bit fiddly. Now this will fly down over this hose as long as you keep pushing it and widening it out as you go. If you catch it from the front and pull it, you can see that's already cinching down on that hose now, making everything nice and tight. That's going to be a nightmare. We don't want to do that. So you keep feeding it on from the back and just keep fishing it on down through. So you can push the hose towards you and just keep feeding this section on. I'm dropping everything on the floor as I'm explaining this, and this will just unroll from the box. So nice and simple. Just keep feeding it on from this end and work your whole way down. Again, don't pull from the front because it cinches down and won't go anywhere. So I'll get on and do this. It's going to take me a few minutes to get this on, and when it's finished, we'll jump back in. Okay, so we're almost the whole way down. Now the best technique to do this, because it can be kind of frustrating if you're not used to this stuff, is to just, like I said already, get the bulge on the front. So get it to widen out, catch that, and just push that on down. And it will fly down the hose. You'll move a few inches at a time. It's almost true. If you try and catch your end and pull it, if I pull from here, the whole thing just locks down, lock onto the hose, and you will have a terrible time. Now, I know what this looks like, so keep the comment section clean. No funny, rude jokes, please. And this is a PG-friendly channel. So I'll get on and do the rest of this, and when it's done, we'll jump back in. Okay guys, so we're all the way through. Now I've overshot it by a good bit. Here's the end of my hose and here's the end of my flex. Now I've done that for a reason, because I want to bring the flex out through this before we get to the end. I'm going to pull this back. Now the nice thing about this stuff is you can actually poke a hole in it without actually poking a hole in it. So you can separate the weave and just cause that hole to expand out without actually damaging any of the weave. And let's see if we can just get the screwdriver in between the weave here, and we can open up a hole. It's a little bit tricky because it's very kind of springy stuff, especially when the hose is inside it. Now it just wants to close back up. So there's a hole kind of separated there. I want to try and get my flex out through that if I can, before that snaps back and closes up on me. Okay, there we go. A little bit fidgety, but that's what I wanted to achieve. So I want to get the flex out through there. And we want to work this back down. So just like that. So that's what I'm aiming for. I want the flex out at the side, and I want my braid stopping just short of this so I can get my attachment back on. Then I want to pull all this down so that it begins to lock down, stretch out, and as this stretches it out, it will really lock on to this hose so that there's no gaps. That's what we want. So now let's get this guy back on. Reverse thread. Make sure that's threaded all the way down and locked home. There we go. Now we want to cinch this down, so put it nice and tight. And I'm going to get some insulating tape around this end just to hold everything down, and then we can cinch this hose down. Okay, so there's what the end of our hose attachment looks like. So we have the braided sleeve taped on this end. We have a few inches back, then we have our cord popping out, then we have our hose attachment. Now what I want to do is what I told you not to do when you were trying to fish this through, is to pull this way and get it to tighten down. So you can see if I push that way, it bulges. So I want to start pulling this now and cinching this whole thing back down all the way to the end so that it tightens nicely onto this hose. And when we get to the end, I'm going to repeat that step. So when I get that done, we'll jump back in. Okay guys, so there we go. Here's both end of our hoses done. So that's the side that goes into our tool, and that's the side that attaches onto the dust collection system. And you can see about 6 inches back from either end, we just have our cords left out. So that's done, so we can incorporate our little socket or plug here, and we can attach it to the tool where it's not going to be causing us any issues. So that's the next thing we need to look at now, is how we're going to quick couple this to the tool. Let's have a look. Okay, so let's look at this where we're attaching to our tool. Now, I'm doing this with my Bosch track saw just to demonstrate for the purpose of this video. I will be doing this with the rest of my tools that need dust extraction like this. And it's only power tools, guys. No machines are to be used on this system or these type plugs. So don't attempt to do this with like a table saw or anything like that. That would be absolutely silly. This is for power tools, hand power tools only. Okay, that being said, let's have a look and see what's the most convenient position for this. Now, I want to keep my socket about here on my hose, so I'll be making that off somewhere there. So I'm going to just check a good flex length then, or a good cord length from our power tool. Somewhere where it's going to be nice, tidy, where the tool can function and it's not going to be getting in our way. So around about there, I reckon we're going to cut this Bosch power cord. So here we go. Let's get this cut. So I'm talking about there for that. Now this is going to be a different measurement for every one of your tools, depending on where the dust extractor attaches and where the power lead attaches. Obviously, once you make this guy off to the hose, that's always going to be there. It's the flex or cord length from the tool itself that's going to be different lengths. So make sure you check that for every tool. Set it up like this and test. You don't want to cut this and then find it's been too short. Okay, that's a little tip. So like I said, let's get this roughly where we want it to be. So that's going to be in there. I want that guy there. So about there is good. So here we go. Bye-bye, a Bosch cord. Done. Now, another very important thing that I have got to point out when you're doing this, this is extremely important. The plug end goes on the tool, not the socket end. So the end with the exposed pins, that's the plug that goes on the tool. The reason for that is this end will be live. So you never ever want exposed live pins when you're making up these cords. So don't make that mistake. The plug end goes on the tool, okay? So don't do that. Don't make that mistake. Very important. You don't want live pins. Now, I'm going to get on and make these off. I'll show you how to do one of them, and then I'm going to get on and do the rest. Okay, guys, I'm going to make off one of these quick couples very, very quickly. I'm not going to get too in-depth into it. I have a full video on how to make off plugs and all that stuff working with flex, and how to get proper connections is contained in that video if you want to check it out. But very briefly, like I said, our plug end goes here, or our socket end on this side, sorry, and our plug end always on the tool. So in order to get these two pieces apart, they literally just twist off like that. That gets you access to the terminals, and that's your gland end. So you just want to ensure that the outer sheet is caught within your gland, then you cinch that guy down. So we're going to strip our flex. And like I've said in previous videos, stripping flex is pretty easy. You just want to get a knife and you just score it. You don't cut through to the cores. You just score it, then bend it over, and it will snap all the way around like that. And your most important thing to do is not cut the inner insulation on these cores, guys, all right? Now, let's get these stripped. We're going to be doing twist connections. Again, I'm assuming you guys don't have crimps and crimping tools and ferrules, so I'm going to show you how to do this just in a twist connection. So we want to get a good twisted connection. This is flexible cable, so it's stranded copper. We do not want any loose strands. This doesn't want to look like a messy hairdo when we're done. Everything wants to be nice, tight, twisted together, and the entirety of all these strands need to be within the connection with no copper shown. So we don't want to end up with a magpie's nest at the end of our copper when we put these in, all right? It's to look just like that. Hopefully that's coming out on camera, guys. Nice and twisted up. Again, I have a full video on how to do all this, so definitely check it out. Now let's get our cables inside in the housing of our socket. Slip that on. This cable that I'm using is a little bit on the big side. Like I said, this 110 flex is 2.5, which is a little bit on the large side, but bigger is better when it comes to this kind of stuff. So let's get our terminals connected. Okay, so here's a close-up of the socket side, and you can see that little locator pin there to make it match up with the plug, and that's because this one here is the earth, and that way you can't mix it up. So when we're connecting it up, you can see, hopefully this is coming out on the camera, you can see the earth symbol there, you can see the L, it's upside down there, L for live, N for neutral. The terminals are down inside there. It's going to be hard to see these on camera, and there's the screws for them. So we want to ensure that our copper is all the way down inside in those terminals, and it's good and cinched up, and there's no copper showing out here when we're done. So I'll connect this up now, and I'll show you what it should look like when we're finished. Okay guys, so there's what it should look like when we are finished. Our entire copper is hidden. There's no copper popping out here. We have no spare strands. There's nothing sticking out. Like I said, it doesn't look like a magpie's nest. Everything is caught nicely inside in the screw, and the insulation is all the way to the back of the socket here. No copper on show, and you can give them connections a good little pull just to make sure everything is cinched down and in place. And once that's done, then you just slide this guy up and twist him on. And then the crush gland on the back, as I tighten this down, it will squeeze onto this guy. So that gives us our IP rating. It ensures no water and dust and stuff can get in here. It also locks it onto the cable. So that cinches down good and tight, so that cable cannot pull out now. So it's important that the outer sheet is caught behind this gland. Very, very important. I don't want to see any cores out here. The outer sheet has to go all the way inside in this gland, because this gland crushes down on the outer sheet. That grips the cable, takes the pressure off the connections, and it also gives you your water seal and your dust seal, which is what gives this its IP rating. So that's the socket done. The plug is the exact same thing. It's just a replica of this. So I'll get on and stick that on the tool. Now the tool is 2-core, so we've only got a brown and a blue to connect up. This is 3-core, so the one that goes with your hose, make sure it's a 3-core, because you do not know if one of your tools will require an earth. If it does, great, it's there. If it doesn't need it, it's no harm, but it's always good to have it. So make sure that you use a 3-core flex with the hose. Okay guys, very quickly before I close up the plug ends, you can see the pins are in there. That's why we want this on the tool, because if it was on the other end, they would be live and you could risk coming in contact with them. But you can see the connections on the plug end are identical to the socket side, except for the Bosch power tool just has a live and a neutral. It has no earth or no ground, because the tool is deemed to be fully insulated, so it doesn't actually require one. But some tools might, which is why we need a 3-core on the other side. But same thing again, just close that guy up. Then put on our gland, tighten that all the way down until it crushes onto our flex, and then again our outer sheet is gripped, and now we have a nice plug on the end of our tool. There we go. Okay guys, so we are almost done, and this is where it starts to make some sense for all you guys who are wondering what the hell am I at up until this point. But now you can see I have my vacuum attachment here, and I have a power supply here. So it's just a case of plug that into my track saw. Now I can connect up my power just like that. Get the two of those together, get those pins to line up. If I get that right, there we go. Make sure the earth is to the earth. And then I can cinch that down, which is the nice thing about these little connections, is that they screw together. So all the wiggling and pulling in the world is not going to pull that apart, so I don't have to worry about arcing. So now you can see that's my track saw now connected to dust and to power. And if I want to swap onto another tool, I can just put these plugs on all my tools, my sanders, my routers, whatever. And again, that just plugs into the next tool, and we have power supply. Now, this is where you and I may differ. So let's go through what we're going to do on this end. I'm going to be connecting this up above my head to my existing dust extraction system. So I'm going to be using another one of these Knights Bridges plugs on the end of a cord up here. You, however, may want to use this with an actual vacuum on the floor that has a plug built into it, or a socket built into it for the use of your tool, in which case you would be fitting one of these 13 amp plugs if you're in the UK and Ireland, the 220 volt type, or if you guys are working out on site and you guys have to operate at 110, it would be one of these guys, you know the ones, the 110 yellow plugs, or sockets, yeah, plugs, sorry, that would be going on this end, so you may want to leave this one be a little bit longer, and that can go into your vacuum if your vacuum works on 110. So that's what you guys will need to do if you're not using it in the workshop. If you are going to be using it in the workshop, I'll show you my setup now. Okay guys, so this is how my particular system is going to work. I have my overhead dust extraction brought over to my MFT table. You guys would have seen me do that in a previous video. So I've just ran more of that yellow toughened flex over to the socket at my dust extractor. Now you guys will also have seen me make a video about extension leads and how I absolutely detest extension leads as a permanent solution. However, this is a bit different. The flex that I've used, or the cord that I've used, is twice the diameter of the one that comes with the tool. It is the size of the cable that I would have been running for a socket anyway, so it's actually increased the carrying capacity of the circuit, even though I've technically lengthened the flex all the way over to my socket from this power tool. It's large enough to do exactly what I needed to do, so that's actually fine. And the fact that it's a toughened flex, and the fact that it's going over to the automatic switching socket for my dust extraction, it's actually quite safe in that regard. So it's not like using extension lead, it's not like using something that's coiled up, it's just a short run over to there, and it's doubled the actual diameter of the original flex. So we're good and it's safe. So that's my setup. Now, something to remember, we need to put our plug on this end. Remember, our plug is on the tool because this end can be live. Likewise, when this is disconnected, it's this end here that will be live. So we want to make sure our plug is here, not here. So socket this side, plug this side, socket this side, plug this side. That's very important. Always think of where your pins are. You never want to be potentially grab live pins. You always disconnect the pins. You never connect to the pins. If that makes sense, get that into your heads, guys. Okay, that's very, very important. So we'll have a quick look over here and I'll show you where I'm plugging in. Okay guys, so this is where my other end of my lead ends up. It ends up in this socket, and if you guys have watched the video of my wireless dust extraction controls, you know that my wireless switches switch this contactor, which switch the power to this socket, which switches on my dust extractor. That will now also switch the power on this lead. So when I hit on my dust extractor, I have power to those tools through that lead, which then forces me to use my dust extraction with my tools. So if my dust extractor is not running, I can't use my tools. So it's a good little safety tip. Again, to protect the health, I suppose, it will force me to always use my dust extractor with my tools. So that's my setup. Okay guys, just to quickly demonstrate that for you then, so you can see I have no power now currently at my track saw. However, if I switch on my dust extraction, there we go. I now have my plunge saw. Switch that off. Now this is now dead as well, so it's a nice little safety feature. And again, like I said, it forces me to use my dust extraction with my tools and not to just take that chance. And you know, like we all do from time to time. So there we go. Okay guys, so you can see exactly how my system now is going to work. And like I said, if you guys are going to be using your tools out on site, then just put the correct plug on the other end of your lead and you are good to go. Now I should just point out as well, keep the original cords from your power tools. I can just fit one of those night bridge plugs to the end of this now and plug this back into my tool and use my tool exactly as it was before I modified. So if I ever want to take this with me, use it somewhere else where I don't have access to my entire system, I can still use it as a normal tool. Or if I want to loan this to somebody, they can use it as a normal tool as well. So the tool doesn't have to be used with this system. We can still interchange it. So that's one good thing to note. So there you go guys. Now let's talk about some positives and negatives of what we've just done. Okay guys, so the pros and the cons of what we've just done in making what we shall call the poor man's Festool Quick Connect. So you can see the convenience of using this. You have your power and you have your dust extraction in one, and you can connect this to any one of your tools once you have them set up this way. So the exact same way as the Festool system. It's a very, very handy system to use, the Quick Connect system, and we essentially replicated that here. So that's the big plus side. Now, what's the negative to doing this? Well, you've just cut the power cord off your tool. Now, technically, you haven't opened the tool up, so it still might not void the warranty, but still, you've cut the power cord off it. You've probably affected the resale value of the tool if you ever do want to sell it again. So that's something to think about. So think about the warranty, think about the resale value. If those two options are no good for you, then this mightn't be any good for you. But if you do want this system and you don't want to fork out for the Festool stuff, then this is a good option. Now, another major con to doing this is the fact that we've just added an extra connection, and it's not just one connection here. So when you think of a plug and a socket, that's not one connection, it's actually 3 connections. So you have to connect the cord to the plug, you have to connect the plug to the socket, and you have to connect the other side of the cord to the socket. So connection to the plug, plug and socket, connection to the socket. That's 3 connections. That's 3 points of failure. It's 3 potential points of resistance. It's 3 potential points that can go wrong. Now I have 3 here, I have another 3 right there, so I've added 6 connection points to this circuit. So that's 6 potential points where this system can now fail. Now, if you do everything correctly and you take your time to make sure that the connections are good and solid, and that you use locking connectors like these ones, if you can't get these, get something similar, make sure they lock, then it should not be an issue. But just bear that in mind. Another thing to bear in mind as well is this saw is 1400 watts, so at between 220 to 240 volts, that's roughly 7 amps. This connector, this plug and socket, is capable of running 16 amps, so it's well within its capacity. Make sure you always oversize your connections, guys. Don't get something the same size as the tool. The potential for it to burn out, to arc, to flash, whatever, to overheat is there, so always oversize that. So these are nice and tidy. They're 16 amp. That's more than enough for any power tool that you're going to be using, any handheld power tool, I should say. That's another thing I want to point out as well. I've said it already in this video. This is for handheld power tools only. So for like your skill saws, your circular saws, your plunge saws, your your sanders and your routers. That's the limit of what this system is for. So nothing else. Don't attempt to use this for a table saw or anything like that. That would just be ridiculous. So there we go, guys. That's the pros and cons summed up. And there is what you asked for, the poor man's Festool quick connection. Okay guys, so there we go. Hopefully that answers a bunch of questions now I've been getting asked lately about making the poor man's version of the Festool Quick Connect. So there you go, that's it done. That's how you do it. That's what you can achieve. A bit of braided sleeve, some toughened flex, and some plug and sockets that lock together, nice and slim inline ones. So yes, it can absolutely be done, and hopefully you've enjoyed that one, guys. Hopefully you've found it informative. Hopefully it will help you with your decision now, whether you decide this is for you or whether this actually isn't for you. It should give you guys some good information, and you'll see me now using this system in upcoming videos. You'll see me plug and play with this, and if it fails, I will be sure to let you know. If I run into any issues with it, I will be sure to let you guys know in upcoming videos. So hopefully you've enjoyed it, guys. If you have, give it a thumbs up. Comments and questions below. As always, I try to get back to everybody. If you're new here, think about hitting that subscribe button. And as always, a massive thank you to all the supporters, all the commenters, especially the guys over on Patreon who continue to support this channel. It is very much appreciated, guys. And if you want to support what I do here, guys, I will link my Patreon below. I'll also link my PayPal if you ever want to buy me a cup of coffee. That would be a good way to help support what I do here too. That would be absolutely fantastic. And thanks to everybody who has done so far. Very much appreciated, guys. So that's it. I'm going to get out of here now. That's the poor man Festool Quick Connect. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.